Good morning and welcome to Sunday Square Off. I'm Bram Resnick. It's a confrontation a month in the making, but the culmination of years of underfunding of Arizona schools. Teachers are taking on the governor in the most direct way they can. This week, Arizona will see the state's first teacher walkout in 40 years.
Arizona educators have delivered a strong message tonight and overwhelmingly support walking out of their schools for their students and their communities and their colleagues.
Yes. Governor Doug Ducey responding in this tweet, quote, "I am committed to getting teachers this raise and I'm working to get this passed at the legislature. We need teachers teaching and kids learning." The governor has proposed a 20% raise for teachers over 3 years, the money largely based on rosy revenue projections. The raises would have to be approved each year by the legislature. Now, that plan still struggling to get legislative approval a week after it was announced. The teachers, for their part, demanding raises for all school staff, including support staff, and a restoration of school funding to 2008 levels. So where is this confrontation heading? Who has the most to win or lose? Lots of questions to ask. Joining us, Chad Campbell of Resolute Consulting, a former House Minority Leader, and Paul Bentz of High Ground Consulting. So, Chad Campbell, who wins, who loses with a teacher strike?
It's tough to tell right now. I mean, I think that they did the right thing by calling for this, but giving a cooling off period, so to speak, a few days, and hopefully let people come together and maybe work on a solution of some kind. So I think that was the right thing to do. I think, you know, in that short time frame, they look good right now. I think they played this correctly. The governor right now is struggling still to find his traction, get his feet underneath him, and he's going to have to figure out what to do here in the next week, I think.
What can he do, Paul, over the next few days to stop this strike?
Well, I definitely think he's got to find a solution here. He's pushing the 20 by 2020 plan. I think they're trying their best to get momentum behind it. The challenge really comes down to I'm not sure that the revenue is there for that, and I'm not sure there's an appetite for an increase in revenue.
And talk about that for a minute, because this plan announced a week ago is not getting any traction in the legislature right now. It's having a really hard time there with Republicans as well as Democrats.
I think the challenge comes down to teachers have a right to be upset. We've been saying for over a year now that they needed to do something with education funding, but there has not been an appetite to do something. So this has all come to a head, and now they've been given 3 days, and hopefully they can find some sort of solution here, but it really is a do or die situation.
So how can that 3 days clarify the minds of teachers, the governor, the legislature, parents, and school districts? They're going to have a lot to think about, and it doesn't seem to me this strike is as tidy as it may appear on the surface.
It isn't, but I think the disruption is going to force the hand of some of the elected officials. So, I mean, we saw, you know, just a couple weeks ago, Doug Ducey was saying he wasn't going to budge, and then a week ago he came out with a plan all of a sudden. It wasn't a plan that most people supported, but it was a huge step forward from where he was at. So I think this disruption will force that conversation. Doug Ducey has to do something at this point. He cannot backtrack from this. And so my guess is you're going to see some type of revenue discussion take place. And I'm predicting something's going to be on the ballot this year, one way or another. A
ballot initiative. And what's, you know, Doug Ducey very mindful of the polls. He's running for re-election. What does the polling tell us about where the public stands, you know, where parents stand, where voters stand on this? He has a whole new series of ads running to try to turn the polls in his direction.
We've seen for over 4 years that education's been the top issue facing the state, and teacher pay is a very important issue to voters. And we've been talking for over a year that they needed to find some sort of way to find additional revenue to pay teachers, but there has not been the appetite to do that. So it's really been sort of pushed off, and now it's come to this major climax, and there's not really a solution on the table that people can buy into, and something like a walkout is really forcing the conservative segments to push back. I'm worried that there might be some backlash to this.
Backlash from parents as well, maybe, as they kind of see like, what's going on at my school, what's going on at that school?
I definitely think that there will be some parents, especially with the inconvenience factor. I think more than anything, school districts in conservative areas, heavily Republican areas, this could have long-lasting effects for those school districts.
And talk about how this is affecting the midterms right now. We're going to talk about CD8 in our next segment. Is this having an effect on voters? Red for Ed.
It's got to. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen Governor Ducey come out with a plan last week. somebody got polling in the ninth floor that showed this was an issue that needed to be addressed. So it's obviously affecting the mindset of voters. And again, that's why I think, regardless of how this transpires, be it through the legislature, be it led by the governor or by the legislators themselves, or it's a ballot measure enacted by voters, or it's going to be on the ballot measure or on the ballot next year, a revenue increase.
Okay, so let's talk about what the end game here could look like, because the teachers are going on strike. They appear to be sticking to their demands, which don't appear to be have a great chance of success.
I think they can get 3 of those 5 demands.
Honestly,
I think they get the teacher pay raise, the support pay staff, and the $1 billion
with money from a budget.
Probably through a revenue increase on the ballot.
A ballot.
Yeah. The last 2, though, I don't even think are legally possible, actually, to be honest with you.
I think they're facing a challenge. The bigger, there's an option here. I mean, we saw this in 2009, 2010. The legislature could put together 2 budgets, one with a revenue increase and one without, and refer a revenue increase to the voters and let them decide, just like they did in Prop 100 in 2010.
So you think that's where this is going?
I think that's a wise way for them to go.
Is that the only way to go?
Who knows? I mean, there's when they announced the strike last night, recently, there's a lot of pushback from conservatives that you'd say that this, questioning who's behind the effort, where it's coming from, and does that cloud this issue, or do they really want to solve it?
But Doug Ducey's going to have to walk away from his no tax increases or tax cuts every year?
But if it's a ballot measure, if it's a referral, he's not necessarily enacting a tax increase. He's just letting the voters decide, and I think that is his political out in this situation.
That's the out. All right. We'll have to watch that. It could happen. Could happen real fast. When we come back, more with Chad Campbell and Paul Bentz. The election to fill Arizona's 8th congressional district seat is Tuesday. Why have Republicans poured more than $1 million to keep a seat they've held more than 20 years? And the Arizona Republic wins a Pulitzer Prize for an in-depth series on President Trump's border wall. We'll talk to one of the lead reporters about how the series came together and the key takeaways for readers. Stay with us.
Watch all day, Monday, April 23rd, as we celebrate 65 years as the Valley's most trusted news leader.